Captain Sarah Chen floated through the empty corridors of the UES Defiance, her boots making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. The ship smelled like old oil and dust. Nobody had been here for 3 years. The lights flickered on as she moved, casting long shadows on the walls. The Defiance was huge. It was bigger than most Earth ships, but it looked different. Where other ships had smooth, curved lines, the Defiance was all angles and thick armor plates. It looked ugly compared to the sleek vessels that other alien races built. That was why everyone called it a failure. Sarah stopped at the bridge and looked around. The control panels were covered in dust. The captain's chair sat empty, waiting for someone who never came. She had read the files about this ship. The Earth Defense Force had spent 10 years building it, using their own ideas instead of copying alien technology. When they finished, the Galactic Council looked at it and laughed. Too heavy, they said. Too slow. Too simple. The aliens used energy shields and plasma weapons. Their ships could move faster than light without making a sound. The Defiance used thick metal armor and guns that shot chunks of metal very fast. It needed 3 times more fuel to do the same job as an alien ship. The Council said humans were stupid for building it. Sarah touched one of the control panels. It came to life with a soft hum. Numbers and charts appeared on the screen. She had been sent here as punishment for speaking up against her commanding officer. Nobody wanted to command a ship that everyone said was worthless. But as she looked at the numbers, she began to understand something that others had missed. The ship was not fast, but it was strong. Really strong. The armor was so thick that most weapons could not hurt it. The engines were simple, but they could run for months without breaking down. The weapons were basic, but they could fire again and again without overheating. While Sarah explored the ship, something terrible was happening in space. The Sovereign Empire had sent a message to Earth. Their ships were coming and they wanted Earth to surrender. The message was simple: give up now or we will destroy your planet. The Sovereign were not like other aliens. They had conquered dozens of worlds. Their ships were the most advanced in the galaxy. They had shields that could stop any weapon, and their plasma cannons could melt through the strongest armor in seconds. When they fought, they won. Admiral Rodriguez sat in his office on Earth, reading reports about the Sovereign fleet. 200 ships were coming toward Earth. Each one was bigger and more powerful than anything humans had ever built. Earth's regular fleet had 60 ships and they were much smaller and weaker. "We need help from the other council races," said General Martinez, standing beside the Admiral's desk. Admiral Rodriguez shook his head. "The other races are too scared to fight the Sovereign. We are on our own." "What about the prototype? The Defiance? That old thing has been sitting in the shipyard for years. Nobody even remembers how to turn it on properly." But they were running out of options. The Sovereign fleet would arrive in 2 weeks. Earth's regular ships could not win against such a powerful enemy. The Admiral picked up his phone and called the shipyard. Back on the Defiance, Sarah was in the engine room when her phone rang. The engines were massive, much bigger than anything she had seen before. They looked crude compared to the smooth fusion drives on other ships, but they were built to last. "Captain Chen, this is Admiral Rodriguez. I need you to get that ship ready for battle." Sarah looked around the dusty engine room. "Sir, this ship has been dead for 3 years. It would take weeks to get everything working. You have 5 days." "5 days? Sir, that's impossible." "Captain, the Sovereign Empire is coming to destroy Earth. The Defiance is our only chance. Make it work." The phone went silent. Sarah stood alone in the huge engine room, surrounded by machines that nobody understood anymore. The ship's original crew had been transferred to other vessels years ago. The engineers who built it had moved on to other projects. She would have to find people who were willing to risk their lives on a ship that everyone called a failure. She started making calls. First, she contacted Lieutenant James Murphy, an engineer who had worked on the Defiance when it was being built. He was now fixing small transport ships at a civilian yard. "The Defiance? You want to bring that monster back to life?" Murphy laughed. "Sarah, that ship is a death trap. The design is all wrong. Jim, I've looked at the specs. This ship is stronger than anything else we have." "Strong maybe, but it's also slow and clumsy. You cannot fight modern ships with old technology. Will you help me?" There was a long pause. "The Sovereign are really coming. 200 ships. They will be here in 2 weeks. Okay, I will help. But we need more people. Good people." Over the next day, Sarah and Murphy contacted everyone they could think of. They found Maria Santos, a pilot who had been kicked out of the regular fleet for being too aggressive. They found Dr. Zhang Wei, a weapons expert who had been ignored because he believed in kinetic weapons instead of energy weapons. They found dozens of other people who had been overlooked or forgotten. Most of them had one thing in common. They believed that human technology was not worse than alien technology. It was just different. While aliens focused on making everything smooth and efficient, humans built things to be tough and reliable. The crew began arriving at the shipyard. They looked at the Defiance with mixed feelings. Some were excited to work on something new. Others were scared of what they had gotten themselves into. The ship was so big that it took 5 minutes to walk from one end to the other. Murphy started the engines first. They roared to life with a sound like thunder. The whole ship shook. On alien ships, the engines made no sound at all. But the Defiance's engines were built for power, not quiet operation. Dr. Zhang tested the weapons systems. The main guns were rail guns, which used magnetic fields to shoot metal projectiles at incredible speed. Most ships used plasma weapons that fired energy bolts. The railguns were older technology, but they hit much harder. These guns can punch through anything, Dr. Zhang told Sarah. The aliens make their shields to stop energy weapons. They might not be ready for good old-fashioned bullets. As the crew worked day and night to prepare the ship, news came from Earth's intelligence network. The Sovereign fleet was moving faster than expected. They would arrive in 10 days, not 2 weeks. Sarah stood on the bridge watching her crew run final tests on all the systems. The ship was ready, but she was not sure if they were. None of them had ever fought the Sovereign before. They only knew stories about how powerful and ruthless the enemy was, but as she looked at her crew working together, Sarah felt something she had not expected. She felt hope. The Defiance might be ugly and simple, but it was strong. And sometimes being strong was more important than being pretty. The countdown had begun. In 10 days, they would find out if a forgotten prototype could save the human race. Admiral Thex Morrow stood on the bridge of the Dominion's edge, watching the blue planet grow larger on the main screen. Earth looked peaceful from space, with white clouds swirling over green and brown continents. It was hard to believe that this small world had caused so much trouble for the Sovereign Empire. The Admiral was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. His people, the Sovereign, had ruled over dozens of star systems for centuries. They had the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Their ships could destroy planets, and their armies could conquer any world they chose. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet," said Commander Vextal, his second-in-command. "Put it on screen." Admiral Rodriguez appeared on the bridge's main display. He looked tired and worried. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridge of Earth's command ship, with officers running back and forth. "Admiral Thex Morrow, I am Admiral Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. We want to discuss terms for peace." Thex Morrow made a sound that might have been laughter. "There are no terms, human. You will surrender your planet and your technology. Your people will become workers in our empire. This is not a discussion. We cannot accept those terms. Then you will die. We have 200 ships. You have what, 60? Your weapons cannot even scratch our shields. This battle will be over in 1 hour. We will fight. Yes, I am sure you will try. It will be amusing to watch." The transmission ended. Thex Morrow turned to his crew. The bridge of the Dominion's edge was huge, with dozens of officers working at stations that glowed with soft light. Everything was smooth and curved, made from materials that humans could not even name. "All ships prepare for battle formation," Thex Morrow commanded. "We will destroy their fleet first, then their planet's defenses. Try to keep some of their ships intact. I want to study their primitive technology." The Sovereign fleet moved into position. Each ship was a work of art, with flowing lines and surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. Their shields shimmered like soap bubbles, but they were strong enough to stop nuclear weapons. Their plasma cannons glowed with contained fire. On Earth, Admiral Rodriguez watched the enemy fleet approach. His own ships looked small and crude next to the Sovereign vessels. Earth's technology was hundreds of years behind the aliens. They still used metal hulls and chemical rockets. Their weapons shot bullets and missiles instead of pure energy. "Sir, all ships are ready," reported General Martinez.
What about the Defiance?
"Captain Chen says they need 2 more days to finish preparations." Admiral Rodriguez closed his eyes. 2 days they did not have. The Sovereign would attack in 6 hours, when they reached the outer edge of the solar system. "Tell Chen to bring the Defiance anyway. Ready or not, we need every ship we can get." In the shipyard, Sarah was working in the engine room with Murphy when the order came through. The engines were running, but they were making strange noises. Half the crew had never worked together before. The weapon systems were functional, but they had not been tested in real combat. "Captain, we are not ready," Murphy said. "These engines could blow up if we pushed them too hard." They held together during the test runs. That was at half power. In battle, we might need full power for hours. Sarah looked at the massive fusion reactor that powered the ship. It was 3 times larger than anything on a regular Earth vessel. The aliens used tiny reactors that were much more efficient, but the Defiance's reactor was built like a fortress. It could take damage and keep running. "Jim, this reactor was designed by humans. That means it was designed to be tough. We will trust it to do its job." The crew began final preparations. Dr. Zhang loaded the railguns with special ammunition. Each projectile was a solid metal rod weighing 50 pounds. When fired at near light speed, it would hit with the force of a small nuclear bomb. Maria Santos, the pilot, ran through the ship's flight systems. The Defiance was not fast, but it could turn and maneuver better than most large ships. Its design was based on old Earth warships that had fought on the ocean centuries before. "This ship flies like a brick," Maria said to Sarah, "but it's a very tough brick." As the crew worked, reports came in from the outer system. The Sovereign Fleet had engaged Earth's patrol ships. The battle was going badly. Earth's ships were being destroyed one by one. Their weapons could not penetrate the enemy shields, while the Sovereign plasma cannons cut through Earth's armor like paper. "All ships fall back to the inner system," Admiral Rodriguez ordered. "Form defensive positions around Earth." Sarah watched the tactical display from the Defiance's bridge. Red dots representing Earth ships were disappearing from the screen. The blue dots representing Sovereign vessels kept moving forward, untouched. "Captain, we have to go now," said Murphy. "If we wait any longer, there will be no one left to help." Sarah nodded. "All hands prepare for departure. We are going to war." The Defiance pulled away from the shipyard with a rumble that shook nearby stations. The ship was massive and ugly, but it moved with purpose. As it accelerated toward the battle zone, Sarah felt the weight of what they were about to do. Admiral Thex Morrow received reports about the new ship entering the battle area. His intelligence officers had information about most of Earth's vessels, but this one was different. "What is that ship?" he asked. "Unknown class, Admiral. It appears to be some kind of prototype. Our records show it was built several years ago but never used in combat." "Specifications?" "Difficult to determine. It is much larger than their standard vessels. The design appears crude even by human standards." Thex Morrow studied the tactical display. The unknown ship was moving slowly compared to the rest of the human fleet. Its hull was thick and angular, covered in what looked like primitive armor plating. "Ignore it for now. Focus on destroying their main battle fleet. We can deal with one experimental ship later." This was exactly what Sarah had hoped for. The Defiance hung back from the main battle, hiding behind the wreckage of destroyed Earth ships. From her position, she could watch how the Sovereign fought. Their tactics were elegant and efficient. They would surround an Earth ship with 3 or 4 vessels, then pound it with plasma fire until its hull melted. The Earth ship's projectile weapons could not penetrate the Sovereign shields, so they died quickly and uselessly. But Sarah noticed something interesting. The Sovereign shields were designed to deflect energy weapons. They worked by bending plasma bolts and laser beams around the ship. But railgun projectiles were not energy. They were solid matter moving at incredible speed. "Dr. Zhang, can our guns penetrate those shields?" Zhang had been watching the battle too. "I think so. Their shields are made to stop energy attacks. A big enough chunk of metal moving fast enough might punch right through." "How big? How fast?" "We are about to find out." The main battle was almost over. Most of Earth's fleet had been destroyed or disabled. Only a dozen ships remained, and they were running out of ammunition. Admiral Rodriguez gave the order that everyone knew was coming. All remaining ships retreat to Earth orbit. Prepare for planetary defense, but Sarah had a different plan. Instead of retreating, the Defiance began moving toward the enemy fleet. Its massive engines pushed the ship forward, slowly but steadily. "Captain Chen, what are you doing?" Admiral Rodriguez's voice crackled over the radio. "I ordered a retreat. Admiral, someone needs to test these aliens. See how tough they really are. That ship is not ready for combat. Sir, ready or not, it's all we have left." Thex Morrow watched with interest as the strange human vessel approached his fleet. It was moving directly toward the Dominion's edge, apparently planning to attack his flagship. This was either very brave or very stupid. "Shall we destroy it, Admiral?" asked Commander Vextal. "No, let it come closer. I want to see what the humans think this ship can do. It might be entertaining." The Defiance moved through the debris field where Earth's fleet had died. Broken ships and scattered wreckage floated around it like a metal graveyard. Sarah could see the bodies of human sailors drifting in the vacuum, their ships torn apart by weapons beyond their understanding. But she also felt something else. Anger. The Sovereign had come to Earth expecting an easy victory. They thought humans were weak and primitive. They were about to learn that humans had something the aliens did not understand. They had the will to fight when fighting seemed hopeless. "All stations prepare for combat," Sarah announced over the ship's intercom. "We are about to show these aliens what human engineering can really do." The Defiance moved through space like a floating mountain. Its thick armor plates caught the light from Earth's sun, making it look like a chunk of dark metal with engines attached. Compared to the graceful Sovereign ships, it was ugly and primitive. But Sarah Chen knew that looks could be deceiving. "Distance to enemy fleet?" she asked. 200 kilometers and closing," reported Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. "They are not changing course." "I think they want to see what we do," Sarah smiled grimly. "Then let's show them." On the bridge of the Dominion's edge, Admiral Thex Morrow watched the human ship approach. His officers were relaxed, some even seemed amused. The strange vessel was moving slowly, like an ancient cargo hauler. Its weapons were not even powered up yet. "Admiral, the human ship is within range of our plasma batteries," Commander Vextal reported. "Hold fire. I want to see what they think they can accomplish. This should be instructive about human psychology." The Sovereign had fought many different races over the centuries. They had learned that most species would surrender when they realized how hopeless their situation was. But humans seemed different. Even when facing certain death, they kept fighting. Thex Morrow found this behavior puzzling and wasteful. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on the main screen. She could see dozens of Sovereign ships arranged in a perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed with an inner light and their shields sparkled like stars. They were beautiful and deadly. "Captain, we are detecting energy buildup in their weapons systems," Dr. Zhang reported from his station. "They could fire at any moment. Let them think we are helpless a little longer." Sarah was counting on the Sovereign's arrogance. They thought the Defiance was just another primitive human ship. They had no idea what it was really capable of. The element of surprise would only work once, so it had to count. "Maria, how are our engines?" "Running hot but steady," the pilot replied. "The fusion reactor is at 60% power. I can give you more if you need it. Save it for when things get interesting. Jim, are the railguns ready?" Murphy's voice came over the intercom from the weapons bay. "All 6 guns loaded and charged. The magnetic coils are running at optimal levels. We are ready to rock and roll." Sarah took a deep breath. Everything they had worked for came down to the next few minutes. If the Defiance failed, Earth would fall. If it succeeded, humanity might have a chance. "Target the nearest enemy ship. Wait for my command." The nearest Sovereign vessel was a cruiser called the Star Render. It was twice the size of any Earth ship, with weapons that could vaporize a city block. Its captain was probably not even paying attention to the approaching human vessel. That was about to change. Fire. The Defiance's first railgun shot lit up space like a lightning bolt. The metal projectile left the barrel at 15% of light speed, moving faster than anything the Sovereign had ever seen. It crossed the distance between the ships in less than a second. The Star Render's shields tried to deflect the projectile, but solid matter was different from energy beams. The metal rod punched through the energy barrier like it was made of paper and slammed into the cruiser's hull with the force of a nuclear bomb. The impact sent shockwaves through the Sovereign ship. Hull plates buckled and twisted. Internal systems failed as the shockwave traveled through the vessel's structure. Emergency lights flickered on as the crew tried to understand what had happened. On the bridge of the Dominion's edge, alarm bells began ringing. Officers shouted reports at each other in the Sovereign language, their voices filled with surprise and fear. "The Star Render has been hit," Commander Vextal announced. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. They are losing atmosphere." Admiral Thex Morrow stared at the tactical display in shock. The human ship had actually damaged one of his vessels. That should have been impossible. Sovereign shields were designed to stop any known weapon. How did they penetrate our shields? Unknown, Admiral. The projectile appears to be solid matter moving at extremely high velocity. Solid matter? You mean they shot a piece of metal at us? Yes, Admiral. A very fast piece of metal. Thexmaro felt something he had not experienced in decades. Uncertainty. These humans were using technology that his people had abandoned thousands of years ago. But somehow it was working. All ships destroy that vessel immediately. The Sovereign fleet opened fire with everything they had. Dozens of plasma cannons sent streams of burning energy toward the Defiance. The space around the human ship lit up like a miniature sun as the energy weapons struck its hull. But the Defiance did not die. Its thick armor absorbed the plasma bolts, glowing red-hot but holding together. The ship's designers had built it to survive exactly this kind of attack. Where other vessels used shields and speed for protection, the Defiance relied on old-fashioned armor plating. Hull temperature rising, Torres reported, but armor integrity is holding at 90%. Sarah felt a surge of pride. The engineers who designed this ship had been laughed at by their peers. But they had understood something that everyone else had forgotten. Sometimes the simple solution was the best solution. Return fire. All guns. The Defiance's 6 railguns fired in sequence, sending a stream of metal projectiles toward the enemy fleet. Each shot hit a different target, punching through shields and armor with devastating effect. Sovereign ships that had seemed invincible moments before were suddenly leaking atmosphere and spinning out of control. "This is impossible," Thexmaro shouted. "Our shields should stop anything they can throw at us." "Admiral, their weapons are not energy-based," explained his science officer. "The projectiles are moving too fast for our deflector fields to handle. We need to adjust our shield frequencies." "Do it!" But adjusting shield frequencies took time, and the Defiance was not giving them that luxury. The human ship had begun moving in ways that the Sovereign had not expected. Instead of flying in straight lines like most space vessels, it was twisting and turning like an atmospheric fighter. "How is that ship maneuvering like that?" Commander Vextal asked. The answer was simple. The Defiance had been designed by humans who had learned to fight on Earth's oceans. Naval battles required ships that could turn quickly and change direction without warning. The ship's designers had applied those same principles to space combat. Maria Santos pushed the Defiance through a series of rapid course changes that would have torn apart a normal vessel. But the ship's massive structure was built to handle stress. Its thick hull flexed and twisted but did not break. "This is amazing," she called out over the intercom. "This ship handles like a dream. A really big, really tough dream." The Sovereign fleet was starting to panic. Their perfect formation was breaking apart as ships tried to avoid the human vessel's unpredictable movements. Some ships collided with each other as they attempted emergency maneuvers. Others fired at empty space where they thought the Defiance would be. Sarah watched the chaos with satisfaction. The Sovereign had expected to fight a traditional space battle, with ships flying in neat lines and firing energy weapons at long range. But the Defiance was fighting like an old Earth destroyer, getting in close and hitting hard. "Target their command ship," she ordered. The Dominion's Edge was the largest vessel in the Sovereign fleet, bristling with weapons and protected by the strongest shields available. But as the Defiance closed the distance, Sarah could see that it had the same weakness as every other enemy ship. Its shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not solid projectiles. All guns target the flagship. Maximum power. The railguns charged up to their highest setting. The magnetic coils glowed white-hot as they prepared to launch their projectiles at maximum velocity. The ship's fusion reactor strained to provide the enormous amount of power needed. "Firing!" All 6 guns fired at once, sending a salvo of metal rods toward the Dominion's Edge. The projectiles moved so fast that they appeared as streaks of light against the darkness of space. They struck the flagship's shields and punched through like bullets through tissue paper. The impact sent massive shock waves through the Sovereign command ship. Deck plates buckled and twisted. Critical systems failed throughout the vessel. The bridge's main screen went dark as power fluctuated. Admiral Thexmaro picked himself up off the floor, his forearms shaking with rage and fear. His perfect fleet was being torn apart by a single human vessel using primitive weapons. It was humiliating beyond words. All ships concentrate fire on that vessel. I want it destroyed. But the Sovereign fleet was no longer the disciplined force that had arrived at Earth. Ships were scattered across thousands of kilometers of space, many of them damaged and leaking atmosphere, The survivors were firing wildly, trying to hit a target that seemed to anticipate their every move. The Defiance had become something the Sovereign had never faced before. It was a ship designed not for elegance or efficiency, but for pure, brutal effectiveness. Every system had been built to keep fighting even when everything else failed. And it was winning. "Captain, enemy fleet is beginning to fall back," Torres reported. "Several ships are leaving the battle zone," Sarah nodded. The Sovereign had expected an easy victory, but they were getting a real fight. For the first time in their history, they were facing an enemy that would not give up, would not surrender, and would not be impressed by their advanced technology. "Pursue the damaged vessels," she ordered. "Let's see how they handle a running fight." The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. The forgotten prototype had proven that human ingenuity was more than a match for alien sophistication. Sometimes the best weapon was not the most advanced one. Sometimes it was just the one that worked. The battle had been raging for 2 hours, and space around Earth was filled with the wreckage of both fleets. But most of the debris belonged to Sovereign ships. The Defiance moved through the floating metal like a shark among minnows, its railguns firing with deadly precision. Admiral Thexmaro stood on his damaged bridge, watching his fleet fall apart. Of the 200 ships he had brought to conquer Earth, only 60 remained operational. The rest were either destroyed or so damaged that they could barely move. All because of one primitive human vessel. "Admiral, the Warbreaker is requesting permission to retreat," Commander Vextal reported. "They have lost main power and life support." "Granted. Signal all damaged vessels to fall back to the outer system." Thexmaro could not believe what was happening. His people had conquered dozens of worlds with fleets smaller than this one. They had technology that was thousands of years ahead of anything humans possessed. But none of that seemed to matter against this one ship. The problem was that human engineering was completely different from what the Sovereign were used to. When alien races built ships, they focused on making them efficient and elegant. Every system was designed to work perfectly under ideal conditions. But humans built things expecting them to break. The Defiance had 3 backup systems for every important function. When its main sensors were damaged, secondary arrays took over. When hull breaches occurred, emergency bulkheads sealed themselves. The ship just kept fighting. "Captain Chen, this is Admiral Rodriguez," came a transmission from Earth. "What is your status?" Sarah looked around the bridge of the Defiance. Half the control panels were sparking from battle damage. The air smelled like burning electronics. But her crew was still working, still fighting. "We are operational, Admiral." "The enemy fleet is retreating." "Retreating? How many ships have you destroyed?" 53 confirmed kills, Admiral. "Maybe more." There was silence on the channel. Finally, Admiral Rodriguez spoke again, his voice filled with amazement. "Captain, you have just won the biggest space battle in human history. With one ship." But Sarah knew the battle was not over yet. The Sovereign still had enough ships to destroy Earth if they regrouped. She needed to keep the pressure on them, make them too scared to think clearly. "Maria, set course for their command ship. Time to finish this." The pilot grinned as she pushed the controls forward. The Defiance's massive engines roared to life, sending the ship racing toward the Dominion's edge. Despite all the damage it had taken, the vessel still moved like a guided missile. On the Sovereign flagship, alarms were screaming. The human ship was coming straight at them, and none of their weapons seemed able to stop it. Every time they fired their plasma cannons, the projectiles either missed or bounced off the thick armor plating. "Admiral, we need to retreat," Commander Vextal urged. "This ship is too dangerous." "No." Thexmaro slammed his fist against the control panel. "We are the Sovereign Empire. We do not run from primitive humans." But even as he spoke, Thexmaro could see the fear in his crew's eyes. They had watched the human ship tear through their fleet like it was made of paper. Ships that had seemed invincible were now floating wreckage, and the strange vessel was still coming. Dr. Zhang worked frantically at his weapons station aboard the Defiance. The railguns were running hot from constant firing. The magnetic coils needed time to cool down, but time was something they did not have. "Captain, I can give you one more full salvo," he reported. "After that, we will need to let the guns rest for 10 minutes. "Make it count, Doctor." Zhang nodded and began charging all 6 railguns at once. The ship's fusion reactor groaned under the massive power draw. Lights flickered throughout the vessel as every available amp of electricity flowed into the weapon systems. The Defiance closed to point-blank range with the Dominion's edge. The two ships were so close that their hulls were almost touching. At this distance, even the Sovereign's powerful shields could not deflect the railgun projectiles. Fire! 6 metal rods slammed into the flagship's hull with the combined force of a small asteroid. The impact sent shockwaves through both ships. On the Dominion's edge, entire decks collapsed as the structure twisted under the incredible stress. But the Defiance had taken damage too. The shockwave from its own weapons had cracked several hull plates. Atmosphere began leaking from 3 different sections. The ship's medical bay reported dozens of injured crew members. Hull breaches on decks 4, 7, and 9, Murphy reported from engineering. Emergency bulkheads are holding, but we are losing pressure. Can we seal them? Give me 20 minutes. Sarah looked at the tactical display. The Sovereign fleet was reforming around their damaged flagship. They had figured out that the railguns needed time to recharge, and they were going to use that weakness. All ships attack Formation 7, Thexmaro ordered. Surround the human vessel. When their weapons overheat, we will finish them. 40 Sovereign ships moved in to surround the Defiance. They formed a perfect sphere, with the human ship trapped in the center. Their plasma cannons began charging for a coordinated attack that would turn the Defiance into scrap metal. But Sarah had been expecting this. The Defiance might not be fast, but it was incredibly tough, and tough ships could do things that fast ships could not. Maria, ramming speed. Captain? You heard me. Pick the biggest ship in their formation and ram it. Maria's eyes went wide, but she followed orders. The Defiance's engines screamed as they pushed the massive vessel forward. The ship accelerated like a bullet fired from a gun, heading straight for a Sovereign battlecruiser. The alien crew watched in horror as the human ship rushed toward them. They tried to move out of the way, but their elegant vessel was not designed for emergency maneuvers. The Defiance slammed into the battlecruiser's side like a hammer hitting an egg. The impact destroyed the Sovereign ship instantly. Its hull crumpled like paper as the Defiance's reinforced bow tore through it. Pieces of debris scattered in all directions, some of them hitting other ships in the formation. But the collision had damaged the Defiance too. The front third of the ship was twisted and bent. Several of the railguns were no longer functional. The bridge's main screen had gone dark. Damage report, Sarah called out. Forward sections heavily damaged, Torres replied. We have lost guns 1 and 2. Hull integrity at 60%. Are we still mobile? Yes, Captain. Engines are operational. Sarah smiled despite the damage. The Defiance was hurt, but it was still fighting. That was the difference between human engineering and alien technology. When alien ships were damaged, they broke down completely. When human ships were damaged, they kept going until they fell apart. The collision had broken up the Sovereign formation. Ships scattered in all directions, trying to avoid the debris from their destroyed comrade. Some of them collided with each other as they attempted emergency maneuvers. Captain, I am reading massive power fluctuations in the enemy flagship, Dr. Zhang reported. I think our last attack damaged their main reactor. Sarah looked at the Dominion's edge on her secondary screen. The massive ship was listing to one side, sparks flying from its hull. Its shields flickered on and off like a dying light bulb. This was their chance. All remaining guns target the flagship's reactor. If we can take out their power source, the battle is over. The Defiance's 4 remaining railguns swiveled toward the damaged Sovereign command ship. The magnetic coils were still hot from the previous firing, but they had enough power for one more shot. Guns 3 through 6 loaded and ready, Zhang announced. Fire! 4 metal projectiles streaked across the space between the ships. They struck the Dominion's edge just above its engine section, where the main reactor was located. The explosion that followed lit up the entire battle zone. The Sovereign flagship's reactor went critical, sending a chain reaction through its entire power grid. Systems failed throughout the ship as the explosion tore through its hull. The massive vessel began breaking apart, its elegant structure no match for the raw forces unleashed within it. Admiral Thexmaro found himself floating in the wreckage of his bridge, his breathing apparatus cracked and leaking. Around him, his crew was either dead or dying. The perfect formation of his fleet had become a scattered collection of damaged and fleeing ships. He had brought 200 vessels to conquer a primitive world. Now he had fewer than 30 ships left, and most of those were too damaged to fight, all because of one human ship that should not have been able to hurt them. As his vision grew dark, Thexmaro realized something important. The humans had not won because their technology was better. They had won because they thought differently. Where his people built for perfection, humans built for survival. And in a real war, survival mattered more than perfection. The remaining sovereign ships began fleeing the battle zone, their elegant formations forgotten in their panic to escape. The human ship watched them go, its hull scarred and battered but its engines still running strong. The battle for Earth was over, and humanity had won. 3 weeks after the battle, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the shipyard looking at the Defiance. The ship looked like it had been through a war, which it had. Its hull was covered in scorch marks and dents. Several sections were still wrapped in repair scaffolding. But it was alive and it was strong. "She is beautiful, is she not?" said Murphy, walking up beside her. Sarah laughed. "Jim, nobody would call this ship beautiful. But she saved the human race. That makes her beautiful to me." The repair crews had been working around the clock to fix the damage from the battle. New armor plates covered the holes where sovereign plasma cannons had burned through. The twisted bow section had been cut away and replaced with an even stronger design. Dr. Zhang approached them with a tablet in his hands. "Captain, you need to see this. We are getting requests from 30 different Earth colonies. They all want ships built exactly like the Defiance." 30? Why so many? Word has spread about what happened here. Every human settlement in the galaxy wants protection like this. They have seen what the Defiance can do. Sarah nodded. After the battle, news of humanity's victory had traveled throughout the galaxy faster than light. The story was almost unbelievable. One human ship using primitive technology had defeated the most powerful fleet in known space. But it was not just humans who were interested. Representatives from a dozen alien races had come to Earth asking questions. They wanted to understand how humans had built a ship that could penetrate sovereign shields. Admiral Rodriguez walked over to join the group. He looked much better than he had 3 weeks ago, when Earth was facing destruction. Now he was smiling and his uniform was clean and pressed. "Captain Chen, I have news from the Galactic Council. They want to formally apologize for calling the Defiance a failure. Let me guess. Now they think human engineering is wonderful." "Actually, yes. 3 different races have asked if they can license our armor technology. The Altarians want to know how we make fusion reactors so reliable. Even the Centauri are interested in our railgun designs." Sarah was not surprised. Before the battle, alien races had looked down on human technology as crude and inefficient. Now they realized that crude and inefficient could also mean tough and reliable. Maria Santos came running across the shipyard, waving a datapad over her head. Captain, you have to see this." "What is it, Maria?" "I just got a message from my cousin on Proxima Colony. She says there are sovereign ships there, but they are not attacking. They are asking to surrender." Admiral Rodriguez raised his eyebrows. "Surrender? The Sovereign Empire has never surrendered to anyone." "Well, they are now. According to the message, 3 different sovereign fleets have contacted human colonies offering to give up. They are too scared to fight after what happened here." This was bigger news than Sarah had expected. The Sovereign Empire had controlled dozens of star systems for centuries. If they were really surrendering, it would change the balance of power throughout the galaxy. Dr. Zhang looked up from his tablet. "Captain, I am getting similar reports from 7 other colonies. The Sovereign are pulling back from human space entirely." "What about their other territories?" "That is the interesting part. Other alien races are moving in to fill the vacuum. The Altarians have already claimed 3 former sovereign worlds. The Centauri are mobilizing their fleet to take control of the sovereign home system." Sarah realized what was happening. The Sovereign Empire had been built on the idea that their technology was superior to everyone else's. When one primitive human ship had torn through their best fleet, it had destroyed more than just ships. It had destroyed their reputation. "Admiral, what is Earth's position on all this?" Admiral Rodriguez smiled. "Officially, Earth supports the right of all species to self-determination. Unofficially, we are very happy to see the Sovereign Empire fall apart." Over the following months, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted completely. Races that had been oppressed by the Sovereign for centuries were finally free. Former enemy species were asking to become allies with humanity. But the most important change was in how other races viewed human technology. Before the battle, they had seen humans as backward primitives who had somehow stumbled into space travel. Now they understood that human engineering had its own strengths. The Defiance became the template for a new generation of human warships. Earth's shipyards began mass production of vessels based on its design. They were not as elegant as alien ships, but they were incredibly tough and reliable. Sarah stood on the bridge of the new UES Defiance II, watching the construction of 3 more sister ships in the orbital yard. Each vessel was an improved version of the original, incorporating lessons learned from the battle. "Captain, we have an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council," reported Lieutenant Torres. "Put it on screen." The main display showed Ambassador Krillvox of the Altarian Republic. He was a tall, thin being with blue skin and large eyes. His expression was respectful, something that would have been unthinkable before the battle. "Captain Chen, the Council has voted to offer humanity a permanent seat on the governing board. We believe your people have earned the right to help guide galactic policy." Sarah was surprised. Humans had been asking for council membership for decades and had always been refused. Now they were being invited to join the leadership. "We accept, Ambassador. But I should tell you that humans do things differently than other races. That is exactly why we want you involved, Captain. Your battle with the Sovereign showed us that different approaches to problems can be very effective." After the transmission ended, Sarah walked to the observation deck and looked out at Earth. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, with white clouds swirling over blue oceans. It was hard to believe that a few months ago this world had been facing destruction. Murphy joined her at the window. Hard to believe how much has changed. The galaxy had gotten used to the Sovereign being in charge. When we proved they could be beaten, it opened up possibilities that nobody had imagined. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Sarah considered the question. The battle had saved Earth, but it had also destroyed the Sovereign Empire and caused massive changes throughout the galaxy. Millions of beings were free from oppression, but millions of others were dealing with the chaos that followed the collapse of the old order. "I think we did what we had to do, Jim. The Sovereign came here planning to enslave or kill every human in the galaxy. We stopped them, and changed everything in the process." "Yes, but sometimes change is necessary, even when it is difficult." Over the following years, humanity became a major power in galactic politics. Human engineering principles influenced the design of ships and weapons throughout known space. The idea that different approaches to technology could be equally valid became accepted wisdom. The Defiance itself was eventually retired and turned into a museum. Visitors from dozens of different worlds came to see the ship that had changed galactic history. Children would run through its corridors, amazed that something so simple-looking had accomplished so much. But Sarah knew that the real lesson of the Defiance was not about technology. It was about the importance of thinking differently. The Sovereign had been defeated not by superior weapons, but by a different way of looking at problems. Humans had built their ship to be tough and reliable rather than elegant and efficient. They had fought using tactics that nobody expected. They had refused to give up when giving up would have been the logical choice. And in the end, that had made all the difference. Years later, when young officers asked Sarah about the battle, she would tell them the same thing. The galaxy is full of different species with different ideas about how things should work. Sometimes the best solution is not the most obvious one. Sometimes you have to be willing to try something that everyone else thinks is impossible. The Defiance had proven that human stubbornness and ingenuity were more than just character flaws. They were weapons that could change the course of history. And in a galaxy full of species that had forgotten how to take risks, that made humans very dangerous indeed. The war was over. Humanity had won not just a battle, but a place among the stars. And it had all started with one forgotten prototype that everyone had said would never work. Sometimes the best victories came from the most unexpected places.